Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A. I'm Dave McCormick from Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined here by Dion McCormick, no relation, who today is going to be going over some matters with the control bar, showing you some other cool stuff, and then he'll be here to take your questions. So before we get started, just two things you should know. First, this session will be recorded, and copies of this and previous recordings can be found at videos.alphasoftware.com. The second thing is that this is a question-driven session, so please enter your questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll try to get to them during the session. So let's begin. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Excellent.
Yep, great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everybody for joining us. We have a real quick follow-up demonstration and explanation for panel cards and control bars, which came out of our last the presentation we did about a month and a half or so ago. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's going to help you use control bars more effectively in terms of layouts and pieces. So that'll be really fun. And then, as Dave mentioned, we'll be going through any of your questions. So I highly recommend you take a moment to go to your GoToWebinar control panel, go to the questions area, start typing away, and Dave will be monitoring that, and we'll try to cover as many as possible. By the way, if you have a burning question, you don't have to wait to get on the webinar. You can always send it to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, at alphasoftware.com, and we monitor that very closely. We get a couple of questions every week, and sometimes they're very simple. We answer them right away for people, or we bring them into the webinar for a discussion. In fact, this was a follow-up question from one of my previous webinars, and we want to say thank you very much for people engaging on that. Excuse me. So with that, a couple other quick announcements. Things are really going along really well at Alpha. We have lots of new features and capabilities in all the pre-releases. Some very exciting stuff, as we've talked about, like client-side mapping, and a lot of really neat kind of under-the-covers improvements that are coming along. And there's a lot of other exciting things in the pipe. And along with that, we have coming up later this year our Alpha DevCon, and that's, man, it's coming up sooner than you can imagine. So always, if you get a chance, go to alphasoftware.com, and you'll see the little notice at the top, and just click on DevCon, see the information. We have great training and other opportunities for you to learn from both us, but also meet and greet and know other developers who will really help you move forward. Plus, you have a great opportunity to meet with the engineers who are developing with Alpha, and it's just a real fun event. We're very excited about that event. So today, what I want to focus on is, I'm going to pop down here, is to, let me scroll down. I got to start cleaning up these slides. We've gotten so many great topics there.
Wow.
Is the control bar. And we've done a great series on these, and the control bar is such a powerful capability. It's very, very exciting. And as you can see, you know, it allows you to control that very, very important space at the top of your screen and also the bottom of your screen. And control bars are very powerful from the standpoint is that they're not only easy to put together, but they're dynamic in nature. And what I'd like to focus on today and talk a little bit more about is that one of the common design patterns that we've seen with the control bar is that, like, when you log in, you see a certain control bar at top. Maybe it has the title of the application there, and then maybe a main menu. And then you have a situation where maybe you go to a list control, and then you want to have a different control bar. And then once you go from the list control to the detail view that's maybe in a different panel card, you want to have a different layout. So what I found in my experiences and talking to other developers, they've also kind of come up with the same concept, is that usually layouts in a control bar, which give you different, you know, it's the same control bar, but you're showing essentially different views in there, are often pretty much so associated with a specific panel card. And the question, and so right in my previous demonstrations, when you went from one panel card to another, you would add, however method you did that, you would add in some code that would say, okay, I'm going from my list control to my detail, and on my detail panel card, I want to show this layout. So you kind of embedded that navigation, and works great. It's very simple and easy to manage. And if you go back and watch our demonstration, it's almost 2 months now, we actually walk you through and show you how to do that. But the concern I had, and was shared by some other developers, is that you're kind of embedding, you know, this logic of what is shown where in your kind of actions. And so was there a better way to do this where there could be essentially a way to say, hey, if I'm on this panel card, then show this layout, and be able to manage that and keep that in a simpler way. And in fact, working on it with some help from our development team, I kind of came up with a scheme which I'd like to share with you today. So again, for the people who are new, and I want to be very, you know, cognizant some people are just joining us here, is that we have a new, or it's relatively new, it came out with the 4.3, it's called the control bar, and it allows you to create these very sophisticated headers and footers, and they're very functional. You can do a lot with them in terms of that. And so what we're going to focus on today is that one of the key concepts is that when you have this control bar in your header, you may have multiple what are called layouts. So you'll have layout number 1, which has that, and then maybe another layout that looks a little differently, and maybe even another layout that has a little pop-down kind of menu and other things that you can show. So we're going to show how we control that. So let me jump into my development environment, and I'm going to be providing this to Dave. This is a standalone UX that people can grab. If you want to grab this UX, we can send it to you. So just send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com, and we'll be glad to grab this UX and send it to you. And again, it's self-contained. It doesn't require any databases or anything like that. So you'll notice, and you've seen, we're just using a plain, boring, not boring, I guess that's a bad way to put it, but a plain UX component. This is our standard one. In fact, if I create a new one here, I go to Web Component UX, I'm selecting the Mobile App Framework Panel Navigator with tab buttons using control bars. And it comes up with this layout here. And what's nice is it already has a built-in control bar up top and a control bar at the second right there at the bottom. So let me go ahead and show you how this works, and then we'll come in and sort of dissect it and go into that. So you'll notice that I've got my standard look and feel, and then as I go to the different panel cards, let's go menu 1, if I go to menu 2, you'll notice something here that not only did I navigate to menu 2 or to panel card number 2, but you'll notice that my header changed. And if I go to menu 3, you'll notice that my panel card layout up here changed at the same time. Now if I go back to 2, I go there, and if I go back to 1, I'm back to my original there. So there's a relationship between basically when I'm selecting one of these menu items, I'm doing two things. I'm navigating to the specific panel card, and then at the same time I'm updating the header of it. And in my previous method, there would be in the JavaScript for this, we would actually encode and tell the panel layout how to change, and I'm going to show you a little different way to do it, which I find is very easy and will make your life a little simpler from there. So let's go on back in and look at this. So basically I have a panel navigator, and we have a multiple panel cards, panel card number 1, 2, and 3. And you'll notice none of these have headers. We only have one header, which is at the top level with this control bar. So we have these different panel cards, and what we want to do is when we navigate to this panel card, we want to change the layout so that it represents something on the control bar. We go to panel card number 2. So let me go ahead and open up our control bar and look at it. So the first thing I'm going to show you is we're going to go to the control bar layout. So a control bar can have multiple layouts. A layout is a grouping of items and data elements that are really items that go on the screen. So let's start from the beginning. So I have panel card number 1, and you'll notice something here. I've gone ahead and I've named this layout to be identical to the panel card, which is kind of helpful because now it's easy. I don't have to have these weird layout 1 is panel card number 1. So I actually renamed my default panel card to be called panel card number 1, but then I also created a new layout for panel card 2 and panel card 3. The idea is when I navigate to a specific panel card, I want to display that layout that's appropriate for that panel card. Now mine is very simplistic, meaning that I'm basically just changing the text at the header there. But if you had something more sophisticated, your panel cards may hold a list, which then has like a plus button up in the right-hand corner, or maybe has a detail view on a panel card where you're going to want to not only have like a navigation button back, but also some text that actually shows what the current list control is. So you'll there. But I've named my layouts panel card number 1, 2, and 3. So let's look at our panel card number 1. Now you'll notice there is a little menu item here. It's not showing. It's a little gotcha in my version here, but you'll see that kind of hamburger menu here and then the text right here. Now when I go to panel card number 2, you'll see that I again have the menu item right here, but then I have a different piece of text right here. And then for panel card number 3, I have panel card number 3. So these are the 3 layouts, and they're associated with each specific panel card. So the idea is when I go to panel card number 1, I want to show layout panel card number 1 or _1. If I go to panel card number 2, panel card under 2 layout kind of scenario there. So how did I do this? So the first thing I did was when you're in here, you'll notice there's a little tip right here. So I'm on my layouts and I'm just been there. It says setting the layout dynamically. And I know the text is probably a little small on your screen, but basically it says you can sort of show the panel card 2 ways. One way is that in your JavaScript you can specifically write, okay, change this layout. But there's also a really powerful way where you can go to the Properties tab and define a little JavaScript code that will automatically always figure out what panel or layout to show. And the neat thing about that is then whenever you tell the control bar to refresh, it's going to run that extra little code and it's going to say, oh, I'm refreshing myself. Well, let me look at what layout I should be using and use that code. So let me show you where that is. So again, I've set up my panel cards here, and now I'm going to go to the Properties menu right here, and you'll notice right here that there's a function about 3/4 of the way down that says select active layout dynamically at runtime. Boom, I've checked that off, and then now I have this that says JavaScript to set the active layout. The idea is every time I say refresh this control bar, it's going to run this JavaScript, and based on that, I can then set parameters in my control bar. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. It's actually a fairly simple piece of code, and I'll walk through it. And I know we don't like to do a lot of code, but this is very straightforward. So what I do is the first thing I do, and this is very important. You'll notice that when I set my control bar layouts, I name them the exact same name as the panel layout. So in this code, when this code runs, the first thing it does is use a little piece of action JavaScript that gets the active name of the panel. So if I'm on panel card _2, this is going to return that, and I'm going to put it into panel ID. And then I just return the panel ID. Well, what's going on is that given the text that I return, it's going to then find the layout that matches that text. So for instance, if I'm on panel card _2, what's going to happen is when this runs, it's going to say, hey, which panel card is active? And the system's going to give back to this saying, oh, guess what? Panel card _2 is active. And then what I do is I say, great, thank you very much. I then return that value, which is a text value, panel card _2. And then what it does is the system will automatically look at my layouts and go, hey, there's panel card _2. I'm going to go ahead and update my layout to be that. So literally with 2 lines of JavaScript, it's going to always look at what the current panel card is, and then it's going to set the panel card or the layout that matches that same text. And that's why it's so important that when you create your layouts, you use the exact same naming that you do of the panel cards. And so what happens, and so that's all there is to it. So now, so what will happen is anytime I refresh this control bar, it's going to run this little piece of JavaScript that's going to figure out what the current panel card is, and then based upon that panel card, it's going to then update. It's going to pick the layout that has the same name. And so for instance, if you're on panel card _2, it's going to say, oh, I have a match here. It's called panel card _2. Remember, this is text sensitive. And then panel card _3. That's all there is to it. So therefore now I don't actually have to embed in any of my JavaScript if I'm going from here to here, because I can always say, hey, look at where I'm at and then dictate which layout I want to use it. Now there's one other action. Now, the only time that happens is when you tell the control bar to update. So you'll notice when I run this, and it'll open up in a moment, I have my main menu here, and let's say I select menu item number 2. So when I select menu item 2, it's going to take me to panel 2, and then you'll notice that my little layout up here has changed. Well, what's going on is when I go to menu number 2, I'm actually doing 2 things. The first thing I'm doing is saying set the active panel to be panel card number 2, and then the next thing it's doing is it's telling the control bar to refresh, that then triggers that whole behavior. So let me show you how to do that. So if I go back in my control bar, and we'll edit this right here, I've got my menu 1, 2, 3, 4, and basically these are just objects, my items here, menu 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'll see I have menu 1, that's let me scroll that down so you can see. You'll notice my text is menu number 1, menu number 2 text, etc. So these are the buttons that are on my menu that the person is selecting from that drop down that goes there. And you'll notice that, and this is basically the default, when I click menu number 1, it's going to fire off action number 1. So it's kind of a quick reminder is that when you have a control bar layout, you have items, little buttons, etc., and that those have what are called actions that actually do behaviors. So I've got menu number 1 is action 1, and then menu number 2 is action 2, menu number 3 is action 3. So I can now go into my actions, and you'll see I have action 1, 2, and 3. So this is the basic premise. So when a person selects menu item number 1, that first one, it's going to then trigger action number 1. And if I go into action number 1, it does the following. The first thing it does is it does my panel set active to panel card _ 1. So the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to tell the system, make panel card X, in this case, since it's action 1, it's panel card number 1, live, or be the active panel. And that's super critical because when I run later, it's going to, when I run the actual refresh of the control bar, it's going to say, hey, by the way, what is the most current? So if I did like a refresh and then navigated, it wouldn't work properly. Now the next thing I'm doing is the following, is that I'm basically getting a pointer to my control bar. So I'm getting a pointer to control bar number 1, and then all I'm doing is telling that control bar to refresh itself. In the old method, I would actually have to go in here and write some code that said set the active layout to be layout action 2 or whatever. But now I don't have to include that code in here, and that's one of the advantages of this method versus the method I showed you before, is that now all of your code is centralized into one place, i.e. I don't have to put all this navigation code everywhere. All I have to do is navigate to the panel card I'd like to go to, get a pointer to that control bar, and tell that control bar to refresh. When it refreshes, it's going to run that little piece of JavaScript that says, hey, what's the active panel card? Get the name of that panel card, and then set the same layout with the same name to that. And that's all there is to it. So if you'll notice, I have action number 1, where I go to panel card number 1 and then refresh. If I go to action number 2, hey, check this out. I've changed this so I'm going to panel card number 2, but this code is exactly the same, because all I'm doing is saying refresh the object. Same thing with action number 3. So the nice thing is that if I had like 10 new panel cards, all I would need to do is set my actions to go to those panel cards and then call the same exact code here to refresh that. And so long as I've named my layouts to be the same name as the panel cards, everything's going to work great. So this is a really much easier way to kind of manage your layouts with your panel cards. And I'm finding more and more as we develop more of these, there tends to be kind of a one-to-one relationship between a panel card and a layout in a control bar. Because contextually, as you move through your app, you're kind of giving the person different options. So when they're in editing a record, at that point, what I'm starting to do, for instance, is when I'm in editing a record, instead of having the save button on the panel card, I'll put a save button up here and then maybe the navigate button to go back. So I'm limiting their options when they're on a specific panel card because I want to give them the most appropriate actions when they're on there. Because, for instance, you may not want to have like the sync button on a detail view. You want to only have it on the list. But in this case, you may want to have the save button here or something along those lines, or some shortcut buttons that do something in the system. So I'm finding that one-to-one relationship now with this methodology. And again, this will be recorded and be up on our website. I'm going to get this over to Dave, and so if anybody wants a copy of this, you can go to you can email us at guides@alphasoftware.com, and we will be more than glad to send this over to you, and you can dissect it yourself. As you can see, there's no database or anything, so you can literally copy this UX into your project and start playing with it, and it will immediately run and be able to go from there. So that is the ability to do a sort of a simpler way to manage control bars. And the real secret of this is, first, my layouts in my control bar are named the same thing as the panel card. So that's number one. You'll notice that I'm going to do a real quick recap. For my control bar layout, you'll see that I have the layouts are named the same. The next thing, and this is super important, is I have to enable this set layout active and then set my JavaScript so it's going to grab what the active panel is and then return that value so then it matches the panel card piece there. And then the only other aspect is whenever you navigate to a new panel card in any of your actions, you have to make sure that you not only set that panel card to be active, but most importantly, you just call and refresh the control bar, and it will automatically sync up that layout to that panel card and be ready to go there. So that's a quick overview of this. Send us your email, and with that, I'd like to go ahead and give this back to Dave and open it up for any questions that he may have.
I do. So let's start with a real quick one, which is, can a control bar be used in a web application?
Yes, 100%. It can be mobile. It's a web control, so you can run this, and we have people who are using it in their web applications on desktop web versus mobile phone. There's no restriction around using it for both environments.
Terrific. Here's a person who's using an embedded UX. So they made a UX with an embedded UX, and the embedded UX has a control bar. They want to know how they could hide the control bar from their upper level UX.
Okay, so that's a great question, and thank you very much for asking that. You'll notice that I've embedded my control bar at the panel navigator level, and therefore this container, this header, is going to show for all of these panel cards. So these panel cards are going to show below this panel header here. You can, if you want to, if you had embedded X, you can insert this, like you could insert it only, like I'm going to just do this real quick. Let's say I want it to only show on my first panel card, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this for right now. So I've got it in panel card number 1. So watch what happens here. So when I start this up, I've got my panel card number 1, and I've got my header. Now I'm going to go to panel card number 2 and check this out. Notice my header disappeared because my header is only on panel card number 1. Panel card number 2 is not. So you could embed your UX here, and inside that UX would have the header, and then it would show properly there. So what you would do is you'd move this control bar header out of the panel navigator and kind of do it at a lower level. So, and remember, you can nest things together. So I could have a top level panel navigator and then multiple panel, a sub one. So you play with that. But the idea is you just need to know where your header is at. If it's at the panel navigator level, it is going to be across all of my panel cards. If you put it inside of a panel card, this panel header will only show in there. So for instance, if you embed that UX and then inside that UX you have a header, a panel card with a header, then it's just going to nest it, and that control bar in that embedded UX will show properly, and they won't see this top level one. Now the only tricky parts of that is that since you're building in that control bar at the low level, if you want to navigate back up to this panel card, you're going to actually have to do a couple, little trickier thing where you call a piece of JavaScript at the top level to take you to this panel card, and that's a topic for another day. But there's just a few little things, and it's easy to do because you can call JavaScript at the top level of this from any of those embedded UX. And actually, I did a little demonstration on that about 2 weeks ago or so. No, it was about 4 weeks ago that shows how you can do that, calling JavaScript to the top level. Anyway, that's how I would handle it, is that I would move the control bar container into into my panel cards and then embed my UXs in panel cards that don't have that header, and that should work fine.
Excellent. We have just a couple more questions, so if anyone would like a question answered today, now would be a great day to go ahead and type that into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel.
And it doesn't have to be about control bars.
It doesn't have to be, yes. It should be about Alpha Anywhere, though. We're going to limit it to that.
That's true.
No, maybe not. It depends how the session goes. So here's a question about control bars, though. Would it be possible to sort of nest them? In other words, could you have one that was at the panel navigator level and then have another one that was at the panel card level?
The answer is yes, absolutely. So let me go ahead and I'm going to go here to panel card number 2, and I'm going to add a panel card after that. So I'll go OK. And so I've got a panel card number, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to do a panel card. Let me delete those. I want to do a panel header. So I'm going to panel card, and I'm going to do a panel header. And I also notice now, this is cool, it says, do you want me to go ahead and put in a control bar for you? And you go, yeah, go ahead and stuff one in there. So you'll notice at my top level I have my header, and now I have another control bar at a second level. So now if I go into my working preview here, okay, I can go to panel card number 2, and you'll notice that I have two, I haven't defined it, but I've got my type level and my second level one in there. Now, that's option 1, and that works fine. You can definitely do that there. But I want to show you something else that's kind of cool. If, let's go ahead and actually, just to simulate this, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this method right here. So now I'm back to my panel card. I'm going to go to my control bar 1, and I'm going to go to my layout, and I'm going to go to panel card number 2. So this is my layout here. Well, I can add another line on this. So now, instead of having a whole other control bar, I can just have multiple lines in my layout for that particular panel card. So I can achieve somewhat of the same result and not have to add another control bar in there, because you'll notice when I go to menu 2, now I've got 2 lines for the same control bar layout. So I just wanted to throw that's option number 2, is that you can, when you have layouts like this, you're not limited just to a single line. You can create 2 lines, thus you don't have to create a whole other control bar, which is kind of handy. The other thing that's really important about that too is that these lines can show and hide. There's this thing called the disclosure. So if you want this not necessarily to be present, but you click a button and it shows this, those are some capabilities there. But there's 2 ways to do it. You can either insert a panel card header and the control bar right in that, which is fine, works great, or you can use the method where you can actually go in, edit the layout that's going to be shown on that panel card, and just add a second line. You can have as many lines as you want, which is kind of handy there. So.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Now, you showed the method today about switching out control bars based on what panel card you were on, but in a previous session you had shown how to dynamically display data. And
yes, that's
that is today's question is, I'd like to be able to display the user ID up at the top in my control bar. So how do you do that?
Oh, okay, great point. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the current control layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to panel card number 1, and you'll notice that it just has a piece of text here called My App. And this text, so if you notice my layout, I've got a menu which is not shown, it's just a little thing, but the little menu is right here. And then I've got this thing called HTML1, which is this text right here. So these are called items. So a layout consists of items. And so this tab right here is where you manage the items. So I'm going to go ahead and go to items. And then you'll notice that I have my menu item, and then I also have my HTML one. And you'll notice the text is currently my app. So I can call it the app. Okay, so that's the app is what it is. So if I go back to my layout, it's just taking that HTML right there, hard-coded, and showing it right here. Now, the control bar concept has something called data elements, and think of it as variables that are associated with this control bar. So I'm going to add a data item here, and I'm going to call this, was it employee number or employee ID or something? I'll just go ahead and do that. Okay. So, and then the value of that is going to be, a default value of that is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So now when I go to my control layout, bar layout, did I get that right? Oh yeah. So I've created this data item, and so I'm going to go back to my HTML1, and you'll notice currently it is static text here. But I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to delete the static text and insert my data item that I just created. So think about it now is that this HTML1, instead of being hard-coded, now what it's doing is that it's going to go look at the data item called employee ID and insert the value there. And so I click OK. So now when I go to my control bar layout, you'll see my numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I go back to data and I just edit this, and I go it's 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, and I go back to my control bar, basically HTML has that data value. So HTML now points to that data value. Now the benefit of that is the following. There's a default value for this data, but now in my system, I can actually, on the fly, update this value. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into my environment here. Now notice when I run it, I've got that default value. So you'll notice now that I've got a default value that's showed for that HTML1. So let's go into design. Let's go to my panel card number 1, and I'm going to go ahead and insert a button there. So I'm going to go down here to other controls, and I've got an item here called button. So now I have a button on there. And what I want to do is when I hit that button, I want to change that employee ID to something else. It could be something on my field, something they entered in, etc. So now I'm going to go into my button. And the way I can do that is one of two ways. Either I can scroll down here to the click event, or I can double click on button. It'll open up here. Now I could go right in here. I apologize. I'm getting over a little cold. I could type in the JavaScript code to change that data value, but what's great about Alpha, as usual, I can go to Action JavaScript. I'm going to click Add New Action. I'm going to start typing control bar. So you'll notice that in our Action JavaScript, we have control bar actions, multiple ones. So I click OK. And then I can click and look at the action. You'll see we have refresh it, set it, update controlled bar data, show, hide, play, etc. So these are all things you can do with your control bar. So you don't have to actually write JavaScript. You can do that. So the one we're interested is we want to take that employee ID data item and change it to another piece of information, another item. So I'm going to click update control bar data. It now asks me, okay, which control bar ID? So I'm going to select the control bar 1, that's the top one. And now it's asking me, okay, great. There could be multiple data variables, so which one do you want to update? So now I click here, and I want employee ID, click OK, and now it's asking me, great, so you're going to update the data in control bar number 1 for employee ID. What do you want it to set it to? And in here, this is where you can put a JavaScript expression. And so there's some examples here. We're going to do this one where we just hard code it to something, but if I wanted to, I could write this and get the value of a field that's on my screen. Or for instance, I could get the value of the currently selected item in a list. That's a common practice where what I want to do is when I go to the detail view, I want to change the control bar header to tell me which item in my list I'm editing so I know kind of where I'm at. Because I might set the phone down for a minute, do something, come back and say, oh, this is where I'm at. So I could put in here instead of I could get the value of that list item, and I could either get the ID for that list item, or I could get any of the items in that list. It's pretty good. But for now, we're just going to say we're going to hard code it to Fred. So I'll go ahead and do Fred. So I'll go employee ID 444-555-666, and then I click OK. So fire an on change event. That means that go ahead and do that. I could even tell it to be animated. Let's do animated. Kind of an interesting, make it an interesting thing there. So I'll click OK. Click Save. Now I'm going to go into my working preview. You'll notice that our control bar will have our default value in there of 5, 6, 7, etc. I've got my new button right here. When I click it, watch what happens. You'll notice it changed that value. Now again, this is hard-coded, and notice what it's doing is every time I click that button, it's changing the data value, which will change what's displayed here, but also it's doing that little refresh event with animating. This is kind of fun. Animations are cool. You can have them come from the left side there. Now let's do the following. Let's take it up another notch, because I think this will be valuable to understand kind of how it works. Is that right now we hard-coded this 4, 5, etc. So let's do the following. I'm going to go ahead and go in here, and I'm going to put in a text box here, and I'm going to go employee ID, okay, and I'm going to set my default value to be like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So now I just have an employee there. So what I want to do now is when I click this button, I don't necessarily want to put in a hard-coded. I want to put whatever values in here in my control bar header. So I'm going to go back in here, reopen this up. Everything stays the same because I'm updating the control bar. I'm doing it for number 1. The data variable I want to change is employee ID. Now I'm going to change this. So I'm going to go in here, and instead of that, I'm going to go dialog.object. And actually, I can go into show example right here and just copy this, which is, by the way, safer. I think I can copy it. Let's see if I can copy it. There it is, yeah. Now, it's getting the value from something called city, so I want to go employee ID. So the idea is that instead of hard coding, it's going to actually get the value of whatever's in that text box. So now I can click Save, and I can go into Working Preview. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. Boom. I can go in here and I can change this to 66671. Boom, etc. Because what happens is when I run this, it first grabs the value of that, then it updates the data value that then when I refresh this control bar, which is included in it, does there. Now, last thing I want to show you about this is that if I go back into my Action JavaScript and I click this little button here, it's called View JavaScript. Guess what? This is the code that's been generated. So we get a pointer, we tell it what to change, etc. This one's a little more complicated because I put in, the animation there. But what's great is you could take this, copy this, and now go back in and put this on a button in the control bar, or anywhere you want to do it. So once you kind of get, and the nice thing is once you understand this, if you need to redo it in the future, you can just paste it and say, oh, I'm editing the instead of employee ID, I'm editing this, and this is where I'm getting it from there. But I always like to show people that there's no mystery. What's going on is we've, instead of to make your life easy, we've got point and click capabilities, but you can always go into the JavaScript and see exactly how it's done, and then you're welcome to go in and modify this and add it to your code as you see fit. So that's the idea of what are called data items, and the powerful item, the aspect of the data items is, as we've shown, that when the item is running or when the application is running, on the fly we can change the data that's shown up there. And in fact, let me show you something real cool. And again, if you're interested in this one, we'll send it to you. Let's see, where is that? Control bar. Here we go. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you something that's similar to this, and I'll be glad to provide you this for there. As you'll notice, that up to now we've been doing text, but check out, oh, I got to change something here. My properties here. Here, alpha local. Okay. I was showing someone web and screwed up my. Okay, so you'll notice here, and it's a little hard to see, And actually, let's go to change this to alpha light. I hope I'm not confusing people. Bear with me. I apologize about that. Okay, so you'll notice in my control bar, I have a data item up here. And this data item currently is a SVG icon. So I'm not limited to text. And watch what happens. Notice these icons down here. They're like temperature icons and they have different levels. Watch what happens. I can actually change in my control bar this data item to just display different SVG text. And so therefore you can not only show data, but you have your control bar. So here's a great example of that. Let's say you had a form with like 40 things you had to fill out. Well, as the person filled out, you could be up here in the top right corner showing kind of like, okay, you're here, you filled out 10 items, you filled out 20, etc. Or this could be dynamic based upon like, you know, what's currently shown in there. So expand your mind to think that control bar data items are not just text. You can also put SVG icons, and all I'm doing is on the fly, I'm updating a different SVG icon to display here, and when I refresh that control bar, it shows that different SVG icon. Very powerful. And if you send us that email, we'll send this along with you so you get both of them, you can go in and dissect it. And we're using the same exact concept here, is that I've got a control bar, and I've got a data item here called SVG icon, and it's got a default, which is that icon question circle, because no settings have been made. Okay? So now I go into my button here, and you'll see that what I'm doing is what I did before is I'm updating the control bar number 1. The thing I want to change is SVG icon, and check this out. All I'm doing is changing the value of it, and the only tricky here is I had to figure out how to do this properly. Notice now I have a different icon. So I'm basically setting the value of that to there. And if I go into this icon right here, all I'm doing is setting it to the medium thermometer. And what that does is then in my control bar, basically all it's doing is just swapping out the different SVG icons. And so when it re-renders the control bar, instead of having text, it shows whatever that current is. In this case, it shows that thermometer at different levels. And so this, I'm triggering it off buttons here, but that could be, you know, when you load in a new record, it could show you what that value is. And so the sky's the limit. It's a lot of fun and just takes a little playing, but again, works really well and it's very cool. So ask a question, and I spent a half hour on it. So I hope that was
fantastic. And you've given half the answer, which is fantastic. So there's another half, and a couple people are asking it. And so, okay, so we've seen how to update data items in a control bar, but a couple of people are saying in the case of the user ID, this is a value that they're going to, that's actually a server-side value. So everything we've been doing is client-side. Let's say I wanted to either A, display the value of a session variable in that control bar, or maybe there's a function, like a security function, that can actually pull up the currently logged in user's ID. If you could those.
I think the easiest way is to use server-side. Okay, so good question. Let me take a little step back. So the idea is you have what are called session variables, or now they're context variables that live on the server. And the issue becomes, well, if you're out in the field, that's a server-side thing. When you're running local on there, you can't get that information. But there's a really cool feature. If I go to properties of my UX control, so I'm at my UX control and I go to properties. And then what I do is I search for publish session variables. Okay. So again, you search using this search parameter for published session variables and open that up. And so now what you can do is you can, what will happen is when these session variables that you specify here will be available to the JavaScript. So you can go in here and put in session.employee ID. And then what will happen is you can use this little piece of action JavaScript to get the value of that. So what will happen is the server will set that session variable employee ID based on who logged in. And then when it serves up the UX out in the field, what will happen is it will include in that information the value of this session.employee ID. And therefore, then I can use this little piece of action JavaScript to get that session variable value and then put it in the var or update a header value, whatever it happens to be. So the trick is what you want to do is you want to use what are called published session variables that will automatically publish what are the current values of the session variable to the UX control that's running on the mobile device. And then there's this little piece of JavaScript right here that says, okay, get the value of that. But you have to set this up. Like if you had like 10 session variables that you were using, you have to tell this which ones you're going to use. Otherwise, it won't take the time to publish it to the person out in the field. Now, what I've noticed is that, and this is a design pattern, is that, okay, so I've got a mobile, let's say I've got a mobile phone, and it's a disconnected app. Well, the first time you log in, you most likely what you're going to do is the first time they pick up the phone and they launch the app, you're going to have them log in because you're going to want to go back to the server and pull down some data. And also there's authorization issues there. What you can do is with these session variables when they log in, you set the session variables and they come down. And then what you can do, which is very powerful, is that you can take those session variables and just put them into hidden text fields on your mobile app, and then they're available offline. Because remember, if you're connected, so the idea is you want to always make sure that data is available when you're offline. But check out, go to your, again, on your UX, go to Properties, search for Published Session Variables, and if you open up here, it gives a little documentation and shows you how to do it.
Right.
And that's how you would be able to handle that.
Yeah, and that forms a nice bridge between getting your server-side variables to become JavaScript client-side variables.
Exactly. Bingo. Great question. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's see what else we've got here. Oh, someone was asking, they saw what's the difference between a click event and the onClick event?
Ah, good. Let me go in there. Go to a button here, and let's go over here. Okay, so you'll notice that there are two groups of action JavaScript. The top group is optimized for touch, mouse, or pointer events. So you want to use the click event most of the time because that's optimized for mobile devices. So if you're deploying on a mobile device, you could use, they both do the same thing, but the click event takes into account when you're on a mobile device, there's some logic that goes in there where if your finger comes up off the button really quick, it doesn't register it. There's just these little nuances in terms of how mobile devices treat taps and other things like that. And you'll notice also for these JavaScript, you have things like swipe, swipe up, swipe down, swipe left, whereas down here you have the traditional mouse up, mouse down. So the top portion is optimized for mobile, the bottom one for a traditional desktop metaphor interface here. So I always use the click event here because even when you're on the desktop and you click with your mouse, this one's going to register. It's going to do that. But you'll notice that I don't have things like on change events and mouse up, mouse down, etc. So that's the difference between these JavaScript items and these JavaScript items there.
Cool. We have a person here who has, say, a button that they want to be able to click and have it call a REST service, and the REST service will give it back the location of an image, maybe a URL of an image, and they want to then display that image on the screen.
Okay, so the way you would handle that is the following, is that, and we'll have time to go through that, but I'll give you the basic principles of how that works. So the first thing is that, excuse me, so the idea, and just a little bit of the background, is the person will call a backend server that will then it will call the web service and bring that down. So the way we can accomplish it, and I just did that with someone a little while ago. That was on inner text field. That's a little different here. Let me go ahead and just show you how this. So I'll just go ahead and use this one for now. We'll delete that in a moment. So I'm going to create a button here, and that button is called actually, I don't want to mess this one up. Here, let's delete that. Let me go ahead and create a new one. Okay. And I'm just going to create a plain with nothing on it that's ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to add a button on here. Okay, and I'm going to say call web service. Okay, so then this web service, what I want to do is when the person clicks on it, I'm going to do what's called an AJAX callback. So the way I did this is I double-clicked on the button, then I added a new action here, and I typed in AJAX, and it's AJAX callback. So then what it's going to do is this will call a function that I can create. So I'll say call contact web service is the name of the function right here. I could go in and do it, but actually what it will do is kind of nice is I can click create function prototype, and it creates like an empty stub. So I can click on there, and I'm going to paste it in here. And then I'll show you kind of where that went in a moment. So what's going to happen is when the person clicks this button, it's going to call back to the server, and it's going to look for a function called contact web server. And so now, and I'll just show you first, if I go in here, if I click on this, so far nothing happens. But you'll notice there's a little circle there because it is making a callback. But right now, my function that I created, contact web service, doesn't do anything. So let's go back to my controls here. I'm going to go ahead and add another control in here, and I'm going to say, and I'll call that image URL. Okay. And so now my image URL right here is, it's what I want to update. So now when I click this button, I want to call that web service and then put that image URL. So I'm going to go back into my xbasic function here. And just to show you how this works, I can go e._set. By the way, this documentation is right in here. So let's go ahead and grab that. Go back here. And I'm going to call it image URL is equal to, here is the URL. Okay, so just to kind of show it step by step, when it calls this, I'm going to run some code, and then I'm going to go ahead and do this eSet, which will then set the value on the front end. So watch as this happens now. When I click the button, you'll notice it made a call back to the server, and then it sent the information back here. Now, this is a text box, but this could easily set the URL for an image. Could be anything you want. It's kind of pretty open is what you're going to do there. Now, so that's the first step. So that's the basic paradigm is you create a button or you have an action that does an AJAX callback to a server back here, or to a function on the server. Now, let's go ahead and just check this out. I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to make this image URL here. I'm going to make it 100% of the width. Okay. So I'm going to now do something kind of cool. I'm going to go into my function right here, and Alpha has a real cool thing you can do. I'm going to right-click in this white space right here, and I've got a genie right here. And this genie is called curl command xbasic. And what this will do is that basically I can take a curl command, and for people who aren't familiar with it, curl is a standard way to call web services. And you'll see if you're calling specific services, they'll often give you a curl example to show you how to do it. But let me go ahead and do that. And I'm going to, and so what I did is I right-clicked in here, went to the code, genie, and did curl command xbasic. Now I could type in something like curl http google.com, and that would just grab the information from that page. But I've got some examples in here which are kind of fun. So I'll do a simple one right here, and I'll just do a get curl get. Oh, that doesn't actually get there. So let's try this again. I'll just go google.com. Okay. And then I'm going to generate the xbasic here. So it just takes that, and this is the xbasic that actually calls that web service. Now yours is going to be a little bit fancier because this, all I'm doing is calling this and getting the data from Google, but you could be passing the parameters to do the search to give it. So I'm going to copy that clipboard, and I'm going to paste that right here. So now I have my code to call web service. This is all done for me, and then what will happen is it calls it, it puts it in headers and contents, Right now this does show var, which is if you're doing in a test mode, but we don't want to do that. But what I do want to do is I want to take this eSet and I'm going to go eSet value is equal to contents. So contents is actually what comes back from the web service call, which will usually be JSON, or it could be just a specific amount or something like that. So right now what it's going to do is that when I click that button, it's going to call this web service or this function. That's going to then execute a web service call to this page here. And then what we'll do is, if it succeeds, it's going to take the information that comes back from the headers and the contents, put them into these variables, and in my case, I'm just going to take that variable and send it into the screen. It'll just be HTML, but it could be some JSON, so I could further manipulate it. So let's see if this works. We'll go Ajax call web service, simple example. So let's go ahead and go into working preview and give it a try and see if we are successful. Okay, call web service and check it out. Looks like garbage, but basically this called Google's website and it grabbed the HTML. In fact, you can see it's showing that on the header. Now, this is, just HTML, but if this were calling a service that returns JSON, you would get that JSON text, and then you could further manipulate it, etc. But that's the core concept, is that you make an AJAX callback. In your callback, you use you make the web service call, and you can use that nice curl to XBasic generator, and then you take the value and then set that on the front end with whatever came back, and you're good to go. So your web service will actually be differently. What it will probably do is it'll probably require a parameter. So you'll say get the value from the interface. Like for instance, if I wanted to, let's say I had another text box here, and I'll call it image name. And let's say the do value is cool stuff, cool image. Okay, so the idea is they would maybe type in the image name they want, call the web service, and then it would use that image name. So what you can do in your XBasic function is that when you call it, you can say image name is equal to e.data submitted.image name. And I think that's my control name, image underscore name. Okay, so what this would do is this grabs the value of whatever's input on there. Then this image name I could use down here in my code to pass it as a parameter to that web service call, and then the results of that web service call come back, the contents here, they come back, and then I can manipulate it and then set the value of it. And that's kind of the round trip of I've got parameters coming in, and then I do something, and then parameters coming out. So I hope that gives you a little bit better feel of how to approach the problem. And the cool thing is this, the genie here is the curl command to XBasic is very powerful. In fact, just recently we added a whole command builder where you could actually build it from here. So you didn't even have to know curl. You can actually go in here and start building it with headers and stuff like this. Then it will automatically build that curl command and then the XBasic for you. It's pretty slick.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Just a very quick question. In a UX, is there a way to count the number of records in a list control?
Yes. Let me go here. I don't have a list control here, but let me go ahead and open up. Let's say I have a button here that wants to do that. I'll go ahead, button. I'm going to go into text mode, and if you go to list, okay, so what I did is I went into JavaScript mode by clicking text mode, and you'll notice down below we have a insert UX component method, and in here are all the different commands you have available. So I can go ahead and let's see, count. I don't know if there's one off the top of my head, but let's see. So you can see these are all the list. Delete row, remove, scroll to item, get list size. That's just the height and width of it.
I think there is a way. If you want us to send it off an email to us at guides,
Yeah, we'll do it in.
We'll find you the right one. I'm sure it's there. It's just
Yeah, it's in here. I just haven't done that. But what you would do is you get a pointer to the list, and then the list can. I'm sure there's an option that says, okay, what's the current
there's a
quantity
property
of
there
items?
that'll tell you. Yep. So we'll,
Yeah, so we'll do that there. But
yep.
what I wanted to show you is that a good place to start is that you open up here, and then you go to text mode, and then down here you have UX component. The other method, by the way, is that if you go to help, open documentation, this will take us to our fabulous documentation.alphasoftware.com. And let's try it. Let's give it a try. List count. And list record count. Dun, 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 dun. That's what I should do first, by the way, everybody. So inserts a static list control that shows the number of records. So that just puts it on the screen. So you don't even have to make a call. If you just want to put this on the screen. Oh, no, right there. Yeah,
right there.
That's a little code right there.
Yeah.
So you can either just stick it on your screen, or you could run this little JavaScript as you go there. So always recommend, don't listen to Dion. Always go to document. This is the lesson today. Of everything you've seen for the last hour, the lesson for today is go to documentation.alphasoftware.com and type here in the search field what you want. Ignore Dion and read that, and your answer will be in a matter of moments. So much of your life will be saved. It's just, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Well, we are out of time. Thank you very much for presenting, Dan, today. Thank you, everyone who has
Great
questions.
questions.
Showed up. Yeah, they were great questions. So next week, we are on spring break, but we will be back a week from Wednesday, and with some exciting stuff. Actually, we're going to be doing a special session. We're just going to send you an email about that, though. It's sort of a build an app in an hour sort of session. And then,
kind of like Build a Bear. Sort of something.
It's a lot like
that
Build a Bear.
exciting. Although this one's less expensive than Build a Bear. Exactly. I can tell that from experience.
So do send an email to guides, guides at alphasoftware.com if you do have any questions in the meantime, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks again, and take care. Bye-bye.